All right, welcome everybody to Scene2IQ. I'm here with our special guest this evening, Sara Geidlinger, who is a local KW creative focusing on film as well as podcasting and is a volunteer with Midtown Radio. You've probably heard her as a host for On the Scene and other programs. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm actually really honored that you asked me to do this. So
Oh,
thank you.
well, grateful. It's just cool to see you around the community in so many different areas. And maybe that's a great place to start.
Okay.
And maybe we could talk more about like how you got into this, because I know that maybe you have some educational background in some of this as well and work that you've done with Laurier. My personal take is I've seen you, perform at the registry, some of your music. I really am a huge fan of two documentaries that you had put out somewhat recently. The first, which I'd love to talk a lot more about, is Hip Hop Hope. And the second one is The Ref Did Not See It. And we just actually talked about that. And I believe the Slamdemonium, which is kind of accompanying that documentary, happened last weekend.
Yeah, it happened last week in Off the Ropes Wrestling School, which is Canada's only female-owned wrestling school, put on this huge wrestling show at the Odd in the Kingsman Arena. And they raised, last count was I think 7,000, but I think it was more than that for Kids Ability. Yeah.
Amazing. And actually, there's a whole episode of this, conversation on the scene. You can find it on demand from Midtown Radio. So please do go check it out. But, all that to say is that's a huge accomplishment. And, shout out to what those folks at Off the Rope Studio does, because incredible.
Yeah, they're doing good work there.
Totally.
Yeah. So yeah, you said maybe we should start there. Like, but what do you mean? Start where? Like before we started, you said, how should we describe you? And I really don't know. I used to be told in high school and actually by my dad, well, he was still with us, to pick a lane, like you can't see the forest for the trees, which I've never even really understood that saying. Is it that I'm looking at the big picture and I can't see the little trees? Like it's too... I don't even understand that saying, right? But I've never been able to pick a lane. And I can tell you, I think I told this story at the screening of Hip Hop Hope last year, the premiere screening. My high school guidance counselor told me that art and music aren't a job. And I ran with that for a long time, disappointed that I'd wasted my high school career. And it turns out that art and music are what I'm doing for a job. So
So wait, pause for a second.
Sure.
High school career in what? Were you in music and drama?
I was in music and drama and art in high school. And when it sort of came time to start selecting universities, he just said, like art and music aren't a job. Like, I feel like you don't really have anything to go on here. And I thought,
your guidance counselor told
my guidance counselor, often in those days, it was, like some poor gym teacher or math teacher has been also given guidance counselor and probably wasn't properly trained. I'm sure he's a lovely guy if he's still with us, but like, I just remember being devastated and I didn't really have that sort of familial or parental support to say, no, follow your dreams, keep going, and I feel like that choose a lane conversation just doesn't apply to me. Like many creatives in Waterloo region. I've always been an artist. I've always created and made things. I've been into woodworking and painting and tiling and mosaics and sewing. Then I found photography, and that was really what gave me a voice. And I ran with photography for years. I still, shoot headshots and events and things like that. Around Waterloo region, so I've always been a visual artist and I've always been involved in music, but never really done much with music. I would say I took a huge break from music for decades, really, until I found KW Glee, which is now Pop Nation Canada. Right. And under Amanda Kind, I joined the pop therapy, like adult pop therapy group. And we put on these like pop and rock shows. I haven't done the last 2 terms, but I was in the first 3. And boy, that just reawakened a love of music in me. And I picked up my instruments again. I play guitar and piano, but my first love is, of course, singing. If I had the time and the space, I would also want to play drums. So like, I do love all these things. So anyway, I'm going to keep talking about how I ended up here on your couch. And there is sort of a famous to me story and to our podcast. My podcast was Bon Park Podcast, and I made that with the late and wonderful Marshall Ward, who was a beloved arts advocate in Waterloo Region and a
I'm
writer.
assuming it's the same for Bon Park Media, where you also produce the films.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. So Marshall was my neighbor, and we used to love seeing each other. We were stay-at-home, work-at-home artist parents, and we used to love running into each other at the local park in between our two houses, and it's called Bon Park.
That's awesome.
It's on a street called Bon, and it's called Bon Park, and it's a little City of Waterloo playground, with the plastic swings and everything, and the slide, the twirly slide that goes down, and monkey bars. And Marshall and I used to love running into each other because we would talk about like arts, culture, music, movies, documentaries, instead of like, so what's your baby, when are they potty training yet, or what's their feeding schedule like, which used to be completely mind numbing to me. Like I couldn't handle that chatter. I needed more, and then not to offend any other Waterloo Region parents, but for me, I just craved deeper conversations to get me through those days, because being a stay-at-home parent and working from home before it was cool to work from home, it was very uncool and people thought you had all the free time in the world. You just need more to fill your days if you're taking a break out in the sunshine with your kids. So anyway, Marshall and I used to run into each other at this park. And then we sort of lost contact for a few years because I went back to full-time work, and we ran into each other in 2019 in the summertime. We ran into each other outside on the sidewalk in front of my house. Well, he was actually walking by, and I flung the window open. I was like, Marshall, do you have time to talk to me? My family was asleep. I was making a smoothie, trying to be healthy. And he's like, yeah, sure. And I went out and we had a big hug and we caught up and we talked about all kinds of things. And, 3 hours later, the sun had moved. We were shimmying down on the sidewalk to make sure that we were in the shade. And, people had come and gone to work. People were dropping their kids off places, and we were still talking on the sidewalk. And I really enjoyed that conversation. And the next morning, I emailed him from work and said, do you want to make a podcast? I've really been into podcasts lately. Do you want to make one? It can't be that hard. We'll figure it out. And that was how Bon Park Podcast was born. And now, of course, that's turned into Bon Park Media.
That's amazing. That's such a cool story, too.
It's the truth, yeah.
The organic growth that happened just based on the conversations and a shared passion for what you're doing.
Thank you. It was it was this conversation on a sidewalk that led to 250 episodes of Bon Park, which was a podcast that highlighted, it was prolific. It was a podcast that highlighted
those who are listening can't see my face as my jaw just
I wish this was video. Use this video so that
50.
So about that, and we had another side podcast that was thank you. And it wasn't, before we started, Darren was showing me the software that he's using, and I was so interested. Like I did this old school 3-4 tracks in GarageBand, cut everything myself. That's how Midtown does a lot of stuff too, right?
You still do,
yeah. And that's how
this is on the Midtown laptop.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Midtown, for letting us have this conversation on your laptop. I definitely reinvented the wheel, and I was figuring out as I go. And 250 episodes of anybody who was connected to the Waterloo Region. That was our rule. We could have talked to anybody, but they had to have a connection to Waterloo Region, and we really wanted to celebrate the people that we live and work and play with. And sadly, we lost Marshall in December of 2023 due to health complications. The podcast has been on hold since then. Like our last episode was with Mike Morris. It is a beautiful episode. He was a big fan of the podcast, huge supporter. And Mike was actually at Marshall's funeral, but that was a nice gesture as well. And funny story that I'll just tell here. Funerals are an interesting thing. Have you been to many?
Thankfully, not recently.
Okay, that's good.
I have been to a few, yes.
So you're not really, it's uncomfortable. You're not really yourself. You're happy to see people you haven't seen in a while, but you have all these emotions. And I remember the next day, Marshall and I Marshall was a shared best friend of two people, me and Colin Hunter. That's what I'll say. And the next day he called me and said, how are you doing after the funeral? And I just said, I feel like I've been hit by a truck. Like that was a lot of emotion and holding other people's emotions in that room. Right. But Mike Morse came, and I thought it was so nice. And without thinking, he said, Mike was thinking, he said, is Marshall's wife and family here? And I said, yeah. And without thinking, I led Mike over to say hi to Marshall's widow, Sylvia, and his son, Mason, and his daughter Sully. And Mike says, Sarah, there's a lineup for people to talk to them. You can't jump me to the front. And I was like, oh no, it's okay. But I didn't realize I was jumping him. It was a brain fart. Like, it just a moment of just not paying attention. And they kind of tapped my arm and I said, oh, right. Sorry, Mike. That's a really bad look for you. If I didn't even realize what I was doing, helping you jump a line. You told me to do something and I went to do it. And it was the state I was in. And that's just a funny little moment that me and Mike Morris had. But yeah, since that episode with Mike, the podcast has been on hold. We have about 6 or 8 episodes in the can that, Dave actually from Midtown has said I should put out, and I really should. We've just been busy with a lot of projects, and it's an emotional thing to hear Marshall's voice. We had another podcast that was all about pro wrestling, called An Unscripted Spectacle. That was a funny little shtick that we had, and we've got episodes of that as well that haven't been released. So, what was the question? I'm sorry, Derek.
No, this is exactly.
I feel like I'm talking at you, and we're not having that.
I mean, we're both podcasters who
right? I
understand that this is how, and this, honestly, this is my preference.
Good.
Is to have this organic conversation.
Yeah.
So
it's hard when you have to pull the answers out of the guest, right?
Yeah. I don't have to pull from you. So
that's good. At any public event, when I've had a microphone, I'm like, ooh, are we sure that we want to give the podcaster this microphone? I might not give it back.
Nice. Well, it did. So to be fair to you, you did answer a lot of questions, which is basically like, I guess we can't put anybody in a box, but we're trying to define what a creative is, right? And actually you brought out a lot of, aspects about your creative journey, as it were. And it makes a lot of sense because, like I said, when I introduced you, like, you're kind of ubiquitous in a lot of the scene. And like, one time you'll be like introducing a film that you had helped produce and filmed a lot of and worked many hours on, or another time you'll be out there, just supporting like the union when they had like the sound check experiment with Sam Abbey, or you'll be at the registry performing, like, so that's actually kind of like, to me, probably the most robust definition of a creative. And like I aspire maybe to be a bit more of those things too, which is really cool. It's actually neat. When you were talking, what I was thinking is you really did mesh and like put together a really cool combination of your love for the visual stuff with the photography and whatnot, and the music stuff. And now you make films which focus a lot on music or other creative aspects of Waterloo and everything. So you kind of get the best of both worlds, because now you're behind the lens, but you're also behind the mic, or doing the edits or whatever it is, right? So
thank you. So you said it so much better than I did. And it's funny about combining the visual and the audio together, like, and the music. This was Marshall's fault again. I want to give Marshall big credit here again. So Marshall had written a column in the Waterloo Chronicle all about this toy, this vintage toy shop owner at the St. Jacobs Farmers Market. His name is Robbie Da Silva, and he just, he had this little booth where he's just packed from top to bottom, floor to ceiling, side to side, with vintage toys from our youth. And Marshall's column was all about how when Robbie is sitting there, especially post-COVID, is it post-COVID? I don't know. But when things opened up again, Robbie would sit behind the counter and watch people find a toy from their youth and be transported in time. He said it was like time travel. They all say, "Oh my goodness," and show their partner or their kids, "Oh my God, remember this? Look at this. This is my strawberry shortcake, or my Care Bear, or my GI Joe, or my LJN Hulk Hogan figure, or whatever that is," and just really be transported. So he dealt with real collectors, and those collectors are in the film I'll talk about in a minute, and people who just had a real time travel experience in his booth, and this was such a beautiful concept. I said to Marshall, wow, that makes such a cool documentary, right? Like,
yeah, it really would.
That would be so neat. And he goes, well, why don't you make it? And I said, Marshall, I don't make films. I take pictures and I do a podcast. Like, I'm a photographer and I podcast. And he said, well, just press the movie button instead of the still button on your camera and put on the microphone. I thought, oh my gosh, he thinks more of me than I'm capable of. Marshall was always pushing me all the time. but he was right. I applied for, at the time, we had the Region of Waterloo Arts Fund. Sorry, is that how RWAF?
That's
That
the
one.
one I'm familiar with.
Yeah. So, yeah, we had that, and I had applied, I don't know, a bunch of times and been denied, as I wasn't really an established artist, and maybe my ideas weren't that great, but I applied for this one and they said yes. And so for like $5,000, I made this film called Playtime the Movie, and it's all about vintage toys and their collectors. And it's funny because Joel Rubinoff from the Record, the Waterloo Region Record, that's a newspaper, kids. That's the paper at the store that has the written stories in. He wrote a profile on me, which I was very grateful for. But he was really looking for, like, okay, so these people, these collectors, right? They must be, when you go into their houses, they must be kind of wild people. And I said, well, no, they're deciding to use their play money and their disposable income on something that brings them joy. And usually for these characters, these humans that were in my film, these collectors, something in their childhood turned. For most of us, right? There's that pivotal moment. Oh gosh, I can't remember the name of this. Tavi Gevinson, who was the brains behind Rookie Mag years ago. Beautiful artist. She once said in a public talk, like, mourn, and I think she was quoting somebody else, so like I sorry, I can't pull that out of my mind right now, I'm getting older, but she said, don't mourn the future, don't mourn what you don't even know about yet, mourn that last summer, when you were a kid, that last summer before, like boyfriends, girlfriends, sex, responsibility, part-time jobs, mourn that little piece where you were still a kid and things were magical. And of course, I'm paraphrasing this, but I think that's sometimes where some of these people in Playtime were at. They were collecting from that moment before everything changed for them, before everything turned. And they're holding on to a piece of their childhood. And that's not weird. That's a beautiful thing.
I love that.
It's great. And so if you haven't seen that, that's
I love
okay.
That's so cool.
It's cool, right? I mean, I'm looking around your beautiful apartment here, and you have some little collections I can see here and there, and mostly books. You can tell you're a book household.
Credit to my wife Karen too, because a lot of this is hers as
Karen,
well. But
you're speaking my language. I love to read. KPL is my hangout. I used to get in trouble for. Is it?
You would.
Oh, great. We should meet up there. I used to get in trouble for coming home late from my parents. Like, I was at the library. And like, oh, sure you were. I was at the Kitchener Public Library, and I had to wait for that one Queen South to get down to where I lived in Forest Heights. But well, so that was Marshall. Marshall pushed me to make Playtime, and then I got the bug. Then we made a film about a local nonprofit, a KW bilingual school, and we started to make Hip Hop Hope. And we could talk more about Hip Hop Hope. But so far, yes, it's Playtime, the KWBS movie, Hip Hop Hope. The ref didn't see it, and now I'm working on a film called The Lullaby Project.
Ooh,
yeah,
new one.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
mm-hmm.
maybe closer to the end, give us a sneak.
Okay,
whatever you're allowed to say.
Oh, I can say anything. Yeah, I'm talking about the whole thing up there. I'm not keeping it under wraps.
Cool,
yeah.
cool. That's
yeah.
Cool. Well, that is a good segue. And actually, I was hoping to touch on Hip Hop Hope because there's so much in that film. Hard to know where to begin, even for me. But I'll talk about my connection and that we dive into.
So I think you're in it for a minute.
Yeah, I think. Well, thank you. I think I'm in the first 30 seconds if anybody's looking. But non-speaking role. It's just that I had the privilege, and it was an absolute privilege and an honor to play with some amazing artists, which were part of focus of the film. John Corbin being one, and he puts on I think it's relatively annual concert called Amplify.
Yeah.
And it's an awesome, it brings in some amazing artists, one of which is a good friend of mine who also was in the performance, J1. J1's also on this podcast, so please check her episode out.
Yeah, I'll listen to that one too when I go home.
Yeah, and for listeners too, I'm showing her out. But yeah, so J1 invited me to be part of the band, which is great, and I do some performances with her. We actually have one coming up on June 14th for Palette X Palette with Good Co.
Nice.
So super stoked on that. So thanks.
Anything with Good Co is cool. So
yeah, really good. But so J1, she John Corbin gave her kind of the reins to set up the band and the arrangements, and she brought in different artists too to perform along with. And then we obviously got some of John's music and were able to like do his live backing, which is so fun because I love playing John's music.
John's such an incredible performer.
Yeah, for sure. When he gets on the mic too, like he does raise like everybody's like Yeah.
He does.
Yeah, the
He's a
band
force.
he's a
Yeah.
force, absolutely.
And there's a difference between being a performer and doing what John does. He connects
100%.
with the crowd. Yeah.
Yeah, you're
Mhm.
absolutely right. Yeah, so much respect, John Corbin, and thank you for that opportunity, and J1 as well. So we happened to be in that concert for Amplify, the one that happened last year where you were filming.
Yep.
And so I got, I guess, cool little cameo being in the playing bass there
Yeah.
for the band while you're doing that, and then you got some interviews too. And I know the previous Amplify you also were filming as part of the
Yep.
project, if I'm not mistaken, including with S and some of the other artists,
Yeah.
incredible artists there. So yeah, maybe let's dive in and we'll talk about it because there's some great cameo appearances also from other artists, not like John Bally and things like that
Yeah.
in
Oh
the
yeah.
film.
No. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like
Second
wow,
time Juno
yeah,
nominated rapper now. Yeah. Amazing.
fantastic.
And Dom was actually, you mentioned the sound check experiment, which was something I put together. Well, I didn't, something I was
Take
lucky. No, I was lucky enough to be a part of. Sam Navi and Roshan James put together this idea and called me on board to help produce it. And like, I can't take credit for the idea. This was that for them. And this was a day-long workshop where the participants were paid for their time, and it ended in a concert. But their mentor in the morning was Don Valley, and they got to work with Don Valley, which was amazing. Amazing. Like it's that one-on-one time, like you can't buy that,
that's right.
And that the artists were paid, that's the dream, right?
Yeah.
That's the dream. So
Totally.
some really great connections and collaborations came out of that. But that's not the question. You asked me about Hip Hop Hope, and I'm going to tell you for those of you who don't know, Hip Hop Hope was actually born out of the Mel Brown Music Festival. So Marshall and I were following the
festival, which I wish they would keep the name Mel Brown. I know they've changed it. There's probably good reasons for that, but I'm not privy to. But
yeah, I think there's a lot of opinions on that in town, and I was very happy to be part of the first and second ones. I don't, well, sorry, first, second, and I guess now it's the Grand River.
Yeah. J1 played at the last one too. We were there, which is great with Julie Black.
Oh yeah, right, yeah.
That was incredible.
Hip Hop Hope actually ended up screening at the Grand River Black Music Festival that year. So like really full circle moment. But Marshall and I had been listening, looking, like, when you're a podcaster who does something about the region that you live in, you're always looking for people to talk to. And we had heard these little tiny whispers of a festival honoring Mel Brown happening in Waterloo region. And so we just started wiggling our way into the conversation. And we ended up talking to Brent Hagerman, who is a local musician and a professor at Laurier. I think he teaches like history of rock and roll or something like that. Something really neat like that. Like Rock 101 or something. I know, like, so Brent, if you retire, I can take over. Yeah. Like, I'm not qualified on paper, but I am in knowledge. So, we wiggled our way into the conversation. We finally got to the right people and said, like, we don't want anything. We just want to cover the whole weekend. We want to do a 3-part mega episode on the Mel Brown Music Festival. Give us full access. Let us come to everything, talk to everybody. And we're not asking for anything. We just want to make it. And they said, here you go for it. And so Marshall and I made that, and it was very special. And we ended up talking to every single artist that performed at the inaugural Mel Brown Music Festival in 22?
Yes.
In 22.
Yeah.
And out of that, especially from the emergent Black Youth Showcase, out of that were born these conversations of like, yeah, this festival is great and we appreciate it, but where is the space for our music all year? Where is the support for our music all year? This is one night, one niche thing. Like, where is the city or the region going to come in and start supporting this? How is that going to happen? And as part of Mel Brown Music Festival, John was doing, and he still does, this youth hip hop workshop where he is teaching young people to write hip hop, to record, to perform. So it goes from, sitting around in a classroom for a few sessions with some pads of paper and maybe a box of pizza to eventually they perform songs that they've written on stage. And only John could pull that off, right? Like, it's unbelievable. And he said something wonderful the first time we interviewed him, which was like, you got to give permission. You got to let the kids have permission to be bad. Like, give them permission to make mistakes and screw up. And then you get comfortable and you try again. Whoa, I needed that. So, in my 40s, like, I needed that information as he was saying it. And I thought, Sarah, give yourself permission to screw up. This is where the magic happens, right? Permission to do a bad job and pick yourself up and like try again, right? So yeah, that's what happened. And I can't take any credit for the inception of Hip Hop Hope. Marshall and John continued the conversations. They'd have these long phone calls and they came up with this idea. And Marshall pitched it to me. And I said, okay, we'll make it. Like, this sounds big, but we'll make it. And somehow Laurier got wind of this, and we were connected with Dr. Lee Willingham. Everybody loves Dr. Lee. Dr. Lee Willingham. And we met with him for lunch, uptown Waterloo. I stumbled because I just couldn't remember if it was breakfast or lunch, and that doesn't matter, but that's why I stumbled. We met with him and pitched this idea, and he said, oh, I think I could find research money for that. And Sarah, well, you should come and apply for our community music program. And I said, oh, I'm sorry, I can't. I don't have an undergrad. I'm a high school educated, self-made lady who, teaches herself everything. And I can't do that. And he said, oh no, there's ways around that. We have direct entry. I said, well, what's direct entry? I've never heard of that before. Because fixed mindset. Thank you, Mr. Rooney, my high school guidance
it goes all the way back. That's why I was surprised too.
Right?
I was like,
I know. Yeah. So they invited me to apply, and I did. And I was my tuition was subsidized, and everything was great. I got funding, I guess is what I should say. My tuition, I got funding for my tuition, and Hip Hop Hope served as my capstone project, which is like your thesis, right? So everything changed. Like, I never thought university was going to be out there for me. I never thought university for music or something in the music space was going to be out there for me. For anyone who doesn't know what community music is, it's very hard to describe, but I do have a master's degree in it. And it's basically what I'm trying to celebrate with my films. It's people making music in spaces in communities that need them. That's it. And it's a bit about music facilitation, but that basically means the same thing. Where does music need to be made and why? And how can we make that happen? Right? There shouldn't be barriers to access for music. You shouldn't have to pay for a Laurier education to be able to play music or perform music, right? So, yeah, I'm just going to cut to, so Laurier accepts me. I can't believe it. I cannot believe it. Marshall says, don't worry. Like, I get accepted on probation, right? Because I don't have the goods to be there or on paper, right? So I get accepted on probation. I have to keep a B average to stay in the program. And Marshall says, don't worry, you're going to be an A student. I'm like, I haven't been a student since OAC year at high school. I can't do this. He's like, you can, don't worry.
I also remember OAC. So
yeah, so when we used to do high school for 5 years, which was wonderful.
Yeah,
wonderful.
Actually, I think that is the way it should be.
It should be. Yeah. It's all about government and funding and money. It's always about money. It's never about the well-being of the student. It's always about money. Right? So long story longer, I end up at Laurier. I have I did not receive lower than an A- in any of the classes, so I have an A average. Thank you. I couldn't believe it.
I'm giving the little.
I worked hard. Hard. I made Hip Hop Hope at the same time I was making The Ref Didn't See It, the wrestling film.
Oh, that was a concurrent thing.
Concurrent. Oof. And at the same time, my entire life fell apart, and I went through a huge, toxic, nasty divorce. And rebuilt my life for me and my daughters. And I think that's, unless I'm not going to say too much more for protection of my daughters, other than it was a ride. And I came out like, have you ever seen that gif of Beyonce like throwing a bat behind her and everything's on fire as she walks all Beyonce like out of it? If you haven't seen this, everyone look for this gif on your phone right now. That's what I felt like coming out of this. I was on fire, and other things happened. And I think I even said this at the premiere of Hip Hop Hope, like, worst year of my life. So much happened. And every time I thought I was getting my head above water, boom, another tidal wave would hit me, and stuff I didn't see coming, like just putting out fires everywhere or just letting them burn because I couldn't see straight, but at the same time earned this master's degree, finished 2 films, and built a new life for me and my girls, and got a beautiful puppy, Charlie, who you've met. Yes. And graduated with a master's degree in October, screened Hip Hop Hope in June, and screened The Ref Didn't See It in October as well. So that's the story of the inception of Hip Hop Hope. Maybe we should talk about what it actually is.
Yeah, let's do that. But just to pause for a sec to say, like, that is an incredible journey.
Thanks.
And you're like, I remember I was at the screening of Hip Hop Hope. which was on its own, like that was an awesome event too, and so
Thank
cool to
you.
see like everybody, and John was there and everything.
And so many connections happened. People who
Totally.
met that night are collaborating together now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. Yeah. And I wore that the John Corbin like
Yes,
t-shirt
that's
thing,
right.
and somebody else I didn't know wore
Wake
it.
up, get the kids,
Yeah.
get to work, kiss the wife, spit a rhyme, then I praise God because I go hard. Yeah.
Listen to "Go Hard" by John Corbin.
Please do.
Right now.
Right
Anyway,
now. Yeah.
after the podcast. But yeah, and then so somebody else was wearing a shirt, and then we both got a picture like side by side with
That's right. I
John.
have that photo. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so cool. But yeah, great premiere.
Thank
And
you.
yeah, like I remember you saying that when you were introducing the film.
Mhm.
So actually it makes a lot more sense. But you're right. Let's actually talk about like the substance of
Yeah.
of this, because you have to see the film. So if you're listening and you haven't, please do. But
Yeah.
maybe we can give like some insight into what it's all about.
Thank you. So, yeah, Hip Hop Hope was born out of those conversations from Melbourne Music Festival, but it was to be sort of a celebration of local hip hop in Waterloo region. And it's funny, you said I was at the first Amplify show filming. I wasn't actually supposed to film that talk. We just thought, oh, all these people, John Corbin, S, Creo, Anthony Sawyers,
So much talent.
who else was there? Oh, Origin. I think Origin is now known by Jay Woods. So I just wanted to say that. Is that right?
You might be right. I believe you're right.
Okay.
Just being honest, I don't recall.
Okay,
for sure,
but just in case, I wanted
Jay
to put it
Wood
out
was
there.
actually at the second Amplify.
Yes.
So
Yes. So that would make sense.
Right.
So yeah, I wasn't supposed to be filming that talk, and I'm so glad I did. So I'll get to that. But it was a snapshot of the work that John was doing in the region. It was a snapshot of the people that he had been creating the Amplify Megaphone remix with, which was a protest song.
great song.
Great song. Oh my gosh, they did so well. And so it was a happy accident that I ended up filming that conversation. So the official title of Hip Hop Hope is Hip Hop Hope: Underground Rhythms and Anti-Racism in Waterloo Region. The reason why it has that big long name is because it became a research project through partnership with Laurier, Shirk Canada, Waterloo Region Community Foundation, Kitchener Public Library, and Bonhark Media. So all of those people believed in the film and wanted to support it. And the research part was just what's happening, what does it look like, and what do we need to do better? So that was the research portion of it. And the themes of it being an underground scene, and also the themes of anti-racism, came up in the film. Actually, if I could go back, I would probably call it Underground Rhythms and Belonging in Waterloo Region, because I think that anti-racism, even the wording, is wrong. We're talking about belonging in the film. So we talked about a lot of with artists about a lot of barriers to access. We talked about the origin stories of how people got into the hip hop scene. We talked about what people are doing for themselves. It actually ended up that a lot of participants in the film, a lot of people we interviewed, happened to be Laurier grads of the community music program. It just, these people are hanging out in those.
Or music therapy for Jay, I think. But
that's right. Yeah. And yes, I should mention, we didn't interview J1 only because, if you can see now, my life was on fire and we missed a lot of interviews. But we did have this snapshot of who was there then. And so many people have DM'd me, messaged me, texted me, emailed me to say, why am I not in this film? Or why isn't my friend in this film? Like, we only had.
Can I ask you a question?
60 minutes.
Yeah. Is there an opportunity to do like a part 2 of that?
We should. And this has been a conversation.
It sounds like there's.
It could be a series.
It's such a great. It could be a series.
Yeah.
Because the content was so great. The people are so great.
Thank you.
The conversation is so raw and like earnest. And as you said, now that there's a focus, and if there was a focus, you're absolutely right, in the film about belonging, maybe that's something else that could like be focused on.
Honestly, like a recap and a part. That's a great idea.
I know you probably got 300 things on the go, but that's just
a couple things on the go. But but no, that doesn't mean the story shouldn't continue to be told. Right now, I'm working with John and Laurier to try and sort of section out the film to use as an educational tool for grade 7 to 12. Yeah.
That is so incredible.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, that's all John. I'm just helping.
I don't want to keep interrupting.
No, please interrupt me.
My mind
that's what
just
this
keeps
is.
blowing. It's just like, exactly. That's what we need to see in the school system, right?
Yeah.
We need to see that local people, their stories, like relevant topics, and the way that music and creativity is an outlet to have that voice be heard, to protest, to be passionate, to share, right? So
Yeah.
anyway, that's my take.
No, that's great. I only just sort of giggled and interrupted because Louis the dog is being so cute, and I don't think he's on the video, but he's being so cute right now. He has human eyes. He's beautiful. The podcast dog, Louis the podcast dog. So yeah, thank you. I mean, it's a passion of John's. John is an educator. He's actually currently getting a master's degree in creative writing right now. This guy's got 5 kids. He's getting a master's degree, just made a big move across country, and he's got this hip hop career. So, you know, also a multi-talented.
5 kids and 4 that are, what is it, quintuplets?
Triplets. He's got triplets in there. Yeah,
triplets.
He's got triplets in there. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
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 Just an incredible
busy man. I think they have a dog too. So
yeah, why not?
Why not? Yeah, why not have a dog in the mix? But yeah, it's to use Hip Hop Hope and his workshop as an educational tool is a big dream of his. So that's something that we're really trying to make happen. And I think that showing that film in educational spaces is going to be important for people to see, like
100%.
Like, you know, Shad went to Laurier, John went to Laurier. Yeah. Look at this music that's happening in your backyards here in Morley region every weekend. You know, go out and, you know, ride your bikes or go for a walk or something out down the Spurline Trail or Laurel Trail, and you'll see what everybody's up to. You know, you'll hear music and you'll find it, right? It's not always, and by underground it doesn't mean it's like dark and shady. It just means it's not in the light. You need to bring
it's not as visible as what is being
yeah. And to see, like, when you do tell these stories, like and you do something like you take this snapshot, which is what was Hip Hop Hope was. You take the snapshot of a period of time in our region of a certain group of people making music and trying to make a difference in the region, and you share it. Like, young people seeing that could say, oh, you know, this is something I could do, or where do you learn how to do that? Like Jess Tunes, DJ Jess, who runs the Under the Bridge dances, I think on Instagram, _ Under the Bridge, who is a Laurier community music grad. They do these dances. I think you have to DM the Instagram account to get the location. Under the Bridge in Kitchener, and it's a community dance. It's not a rave or like a rager. It's a community dance, and they have 7-time world DJ champ Vect come out to those and DJ. Like, wow. He's just like, oh, Vec's gonna be on the card tonight. Okay, like that's insane. That's insane. But these people are creating, you know, space for music to be made in our communities, which is what community music is. And Jess actually also runs Open Decks, which is there's sort of these meetups where they have you know, turntables and DJ decks and all the important little flippity-flu buttons that I wish I knew how to use that have fancy names, and people can just come out and try them. You can be an experienced DJ or you can have no experience at all, and you can, it's like an open mic but for DJ, right? It's amazing what people are doing in these spaces.
That's awesome.
Thanks.
And we could say a lot more about Hip Hop Hope.
Yes.
So maybe for now we'll just park that there. Just for the sake of, you know, moving into a different topic, we can quickly about. I mean, I would just say again, if anybody hasn't seen it, you have to go see it.
Thanks. It just screened at the Grand River Film Festival this year.
Huge accomplishment.
Last weekend. Thank you. I'm so honored. But no, we need to move on. But
yeah, for sure. So then maybe to kind of cap things off on this conversation, we could have plenty more, I'm sure, but for the sake of the podcast, maybe let's talk about the Refton Sea.
Sure,
that's a bit more like, it's a bit more like of recent memory, just because of Slandemonium and because of the On the Scene, which was awesome.
Thank you for that. Thank you for having us on that. Yeah,
I mean, just grateful to be part of it. What was cool about that, at least for me, I'll give you my take, and I'd love to again hear from more about you, is that, and I think you mentioned this too, but like, I literally know nothing about that there even is local wrestling.
It's happening right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's simple as that. Like, I didn't know anything, and how cool it is, not just because of, you know, the sport itself and like the camaraderie and like the competition and all that kind of stuff, but like for the way that it's impacting young people and like the stories that they told on the flag and stuff like that too. It's so great to see that. And even part of my childhood too, like, of course, I watched WWE like back in the day. So it's that kind of, it's not like your Greco-Roman, like high school wrestling, like Olympic wrestling. I
don't even know who that is, but I don't know who most wrestlers are either.
Yeah, me neither. So I couldn't tell you names and stuff like that, but I remember being entertained. I remember seeing like, yeah, like a kind of early, if we can call it, combat sport that was like people could tell maybe if it was embellished a little bit, but it's still fun to
Yeah.
watch. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And it still brought people together. So let's talk about, yeah,
Sure.
how did you get into that?
All right. So again, we have to credit my dear late friend Marshall Ward, and I will. I like giving credit where credit is due. It was Marshall's fault. So Marshall was a lifelong fanatic of pro wrestling. And when I say pro wrestling, I mean the kind that we're talking about, the shiny underpants and baby oil and long hair. Like that's what we're talking about with the gimmicks, right? Lifelong fanatic. He had thousands of wrestling DVDs. He had thousands of wrestling magazines and collectible items, which I helped his wife go through when he passed, actually. He's been quoted in books as an historian for wrestling knowledge.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And just watched it every single day of his life. He consumed some form of wrestling every single day of his life. That sounds crazy, but some people listen to the same podcast every morning.
That's great.
Passionate about it. So it took me a long time to convince Marshall that the two of us should have a wrestling podcast, and we did. It's out there. It's called An Unscripted Spectacle: Wrestling with Wrestling, and that's because Marshall always called
that's a good one, wrestling
with wrestling. That's because Marshall always called wrestling a scripted spectacle, because it is, right?
Yeah, sure.
It's community theater. That's what it is. That's what wrestling is, especially on the indie level, I should say, which is what our film is about. So Marshall and I had this beautiful show where we talked to like professional wrestlers, like important people in the biz, and they'd pop up on our Zoom screen. And the whole shtick was Marshall knows everything and I know nothing about wrestling, or I can't claim that anymore. It was fun, right? Yeah. I can't claim that anymore. I know quite a bit about wrestling now, and I've turned into a fan. But somebody like Raymond Rougeau from the famous Rougeau brothers, or B. Brian Blair, or Tyson Kidd, or all these people, they pop up on our screen. Lufisto, who's in the Wrestling Hall of Fame, would pop up on our screen, and I'd see like, okay, so you have a mug that says "World's Greatest Mom." You've got kids, and Marshall would be like, "Oh my gosh, she doesn't. It's so embarrassing," like. So we'd have this great back and forth as we'd get to know the person, and I'd ask questions like, "What's a suplex? What's a not slam dunk? What are some of the other ones? Whatever. What's a pin or fall or whatever?" So I'd ask all these things, and it was a beautiful little show. And through that, we were connected with Marshall's best friend, Colin Hunter. Colin Hunter and I argued that we were both Marshall's best friend, but I think he was one of our best friends, and that's where this, he was our shared best friend, and that's where this argument comes from. But Colin is the creator of the sort of internet famous kayfabe news, and what that is like The Onion, but for wrestling. So if you know what The Onion is,
yep.
Satirical news, and you narrow that down, and it's about professional wrestling, and it's done really well online. It's a real favorite among wrestling fans. There are millions and millions of wrestling fans, and that's why wrestling is on your Netflix now. They're a big, mighty crowd around the world. So Marshall and I were making this podcast. Colin of Kayfabe News was heavily involved, connecting us to all these wrestlers to talk to. And he actually did our intro for the podcast. It was very funny. It was a short, beautiful little show. And we talked to like writers and all kinds of people, authors. But we had this sort of masterpiece theater music to go with it because it was so incongruent with what the content was. It was one of the most fun things that Marshall and I ever created together, more so than Bond Park. So we've been making this show for maybe a year, and I get this text from Colin that says, "I have this idea. What if I become a wrestling referee on the indie circuit, and you guys film it, and we make a documentary about it, and we meet all these crazy characters, and we, promote it and put it out there in the world?" And I said, "We're in, we're in. Definitely. We'll make this film with you." And that was the onset. We just thought it was going to be this sort of like Morgan Spurlock Super Size Me, but for indie wrestling type film. We'll put Colin in the striped shirt. We'll send out the goof who doesn't know what to do, who's 1 million foot tall. Referees are supposed to be small and short and invisible, and we'll have a good laugh, and we'll film this, and it's going to be a cute little, maybe a short documentary. Well, 2.5 years later, we're still filming this thing. We're still going out to shows. Colin's actually doing really well. He was trained by the folks at Off the Ropes Studio.
Oh, wow.
Yep. And by a few other referees sort of around the Ontario circuit. We met the most famous referee, Earl Hebner, who was responsible for the Montreal screw job. I didn't know what that was before this film. We have a narrator in our film, which is Kat Callahan, who's actually the voice of TikTok. She's local to KW. I don't know if people know that. You know the voice that says, "If you don't know," or 3 things you should do before you hydrate. That's Kat Callahan. Sorry, my Jessie is terrible. And she's from KW. She lives here and works here.
Wow.
Yeah. She's a radio personality. So she narrates part of the film. We had kids from the studio reenact the famous Montreal screw job. We have a big training 80s montage where Colin learns how to dance. We spent years on it. Through all this fire and the master's degree and hip hop hope, and we spent years making this thing. And in the middle of it, we lose Marshall. Right?
Yeah.
We lose Marshall in the middle of making this film. But you spend all of this time with these beautiful humans, and our film became less about, let's look at the goofy tall guy in the ring, and more about, oh, wow, we're meeting beautiful people who are doing a community thing that's just like music every weekend.
So true.
Some
because
families
when
are
you're creating art, it's art.
It's art. That's right. And that's what they're doing. They're creating art.
Absolutely.
It's a scripted sport, right? It's a predetermined outcome, So
you're right. Like you said, it's basically like a theater.
It's
right?
It's community theater. It's their third place. Some families are basketball families or dance families, or or they like to camp or whatever. These families are wrestling families. Every weekend,
Amazing.
Mom, dad, or whoever, whatever their combination is, and kids, sometimes grandma, are out at the wrestling ring. They might be in a Legion Hall or a community center, or one of the shows was in a school on the tarmac. They're out there every weekend doing this. Saturday, Sunday, Friday nights. Most of the time there's wrestling, I bet you, happening down the street from us right now. They're setting up a ring. The Registry Theater holds wrestling.
Right.
Great shows there.
That's one thing that was mentioned that surprised me too. Is it was like you can be at within a half hour, hour
at a wrestling show.
Yep. Locally.
Yeah. And you could go to 5 different shows nearby tonight. There's wrestling happening everywhere. And it's a joy, At one point during the filming of this film, Colin sent me a little clip of a death match, which is like the worst wrestling. I'm friends with Madman Pondo, if you can imagine. He has something called a saw bat, which is a circular saw blade affixed to a baseball bat that he uses against his opponents. And that is a genre of wrestling. But this was a death match that was a comedy match, and they were killing each other with like marshmallows and pillow fights and stuff. Anyway, he sent this to me, and I said, "This is great. I love it." And I said, "Oh, damn. It's happening. I'm a wrestling fan." And he said, "Yeah, it happens, And I am. I'm a wrestling fan. So,
When did you know?
I know. I knew at that moment. That was the moment I knew. That was the moment I knew. And, now we're friends with all these lovely local wrestlers, and we've met these wonderful people. And that's what the film is about. The film is about joy, and it's about these people finding their third place. And it's about the magic of putting on a show that looks like people are really hurting each other, but all they're doing is really trying not to hurt each other.
Yeah.
That's the film. That's The Ref Didn't See It. And you can buy it at therefmovie.com. It's available now. It's very cheap. It's like $10. You can download it now.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Please go and see it. And thank you. That was perfect summary. And
thank you.
Yeah, we just to wrap the podcast, it was perfect timing because I know you've done this, so not your first rodeo. You know how this goes. So much more we could say, but I just want to again just thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
A lot of threads we could pull on, and maybe there'll be a part 2. So
yeah, I'd love to come back.
Yeah, absolutely. And for those who are interested in finding you as the community, this is to wrap up. How do people get a hold of you?
Yeah.
Where are they going to find you? So we heard about your films. If they want to be like, hey, stuff that you talked about was super cool. This is a great idea. I have an idea. Sarah, can you help me? Whatever. How do people get in touch with you? Where do they find you?
Thanks. Well, you can find me at Sara Geidlinger on social media. I waffle back and forth every week with whether or not I'm going to delete social media forever. So
totally
Sara Geidlinger on social media. My website, sarageidlinger.com, or you can find me at Bond Park Media, or therefmovie.com is where you can buy the movie. And you'll just watch for our next project. I'm working on the Lullaby Project, which pairs local songwriters.
Let's talk about that real quick.
Okay, well, it's Sam Ty's baby. Sam Ty is a wonderful local musician and a producer, and she has this group of 3 songwriters who volunteer their time. They collaborate. I don't even know where to start. I'm so excited. They volunteer to write music with mothers who are incarcerated at Grand Valley Institution for Women. They also work with Camino Mental Health and Wellbeing, but our film follows their journey as they are paired with 3 mothers. I've already met the mothers at Grand Valley Institution for Women who are incarcerated, separated from their kids, and they work together to write, record, and like produce a song for their children on the outside, a lullaby.
Wow.
That's Sam Ty's baby. So it's Sam Ty, Jesse T, and Amanda Brem.
Oh, amazing.
I know all people that you know. Yeah. And we're following their journey as they make these lullabies come alive. They've been working on it for a while. They've done about
There's
3
an event
least.
coming up for this.
June 14th. It sounds like it's the same day as your event. You know what Roshan James tells me, though? Divide and conquer. There's so much cool stuff happening in this city every night. You know, go to what suits your fancy.
It's totally possible because, you know, KW, it's like, it's possible to travel and make 2 events.
Yes, you can.
You can. So do it. When?
So June 14th at the Kitchener Public Library Theatre, there is a fundraising concert for our film and for the Lullaby Project. And it is the singer-songwriters themselves, formerly incarcerated moms who were past participants of the Lullaby Project at GVI are coming to perform. And they are collaborating with the student choir of the KW Bilingual School and performing on stage on June 14th. So you can find that on my socials or at the Lullaby Project KW. You can find that if you look on Eventbrite.
Amazing. Let's leave it there, but that's so amazing. And yeah, please go check that out. Thanks again for your time, Sarah.
Thank you.
It's been a huge pleasure.
It helps me distill what I do. Like I'm like, oh yeah, I'm working on all these things. So thank you so much, Darren. I really appreciate it. And I love this show.
Yeah, my pleasure. Well, to everybody who's listening, thanks for your time and have yourself a great night. Take care.